The classroom was quiet, except for the soft hum of the station's air system. Yuna sat in the third row, her notebook open, her pen moving slowly across the page. She was 19 years old, small for her age, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She did not talk much. She did not need to. Around her, students from a dozen different worlds whispered and laughed. There was a group of tall, blue-skinned Valari in the back row. A pair of insect-like chitin students clicked their mandibles near the window. 2 other humans sat near the front, but Yuna did not know them well. She preferred to sit alone. Instructor Male stood at the front of the room. He was a Solari, with 4 arms and skin the color of wet sand. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke about the importance of understanding other cultures. This was interspecies diplomacy, a required class at the Galactic Unity Academy. The academy floated in space on a station called Helix Prime. It was neutral ground, a place where young beings from all species could learn together, a place built on hope. Yuna wrote down the instructor's words, but her mind was somewhere else. She was thinking about her brother. Tay had been a soldier. He had fought in the border wars 5 years ago, when the Human Coalition and the Keth Dominion had nearly destroyed each other. Tay had been declared missing in action. The military said he was probably dead. Yuna's mother had cried for months. Her father had stopped talking altogether. Yuna did not cry. She waited. She did not know what she was waiting for, but she waited all the same. The lesson continued. Instructor Male was explaining how small gestures could prevent big conflicts when the alarm started. It was a sharp sound, cutting through the air like a knife. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. The students looked around in confusion. Some stood up. Instructor Male raised 2 of his hands for calm. "Please remain seated," he said. "This is likely a drill." But it was not a drill. The door to the classroom slid open with a heavy hiss. And then he walked in. General Vorik was taller than any being Yuna had ever seen. He stood nearly 3 meters high, his body covered in dark green scales that looked like armor. His eyes were gold and cold, like 2 small suns that had forgotten how to give warmth. He wore a black military uniform decorated with medals and symbols that Yuna did not recognize. Behind him came 6 Keth soldiers, each one carrying a weapon. The Keth were reptiles. They had ruled 100 worlds for 1,000 years. They were conquerors, predators, and General Vorik was the most famous of them all. He had led the Keth forces in the border wars. He had burned human colonies. He had killed thousands. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Instructor Male stepped forward. His 4 hands trembled slightly, but he kept his voice steady. "General Vorik, this is unexpected. The Academy is neutral territory. Armed soldiers are not permitted in." "I am aware of the rules," Vorik said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "I am here on a diplomatic inspection. The Keth Dominion wishes to observe how young minds are being shaped." His gold eyes moved slowly across the room. "We want to see what the future holds." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Vorik began to walk between the rows of desks. His heavy boots made the floor shake with each step. Students pressed themselves back into their seats as he passed. The Valari looked down. The chitin students went completely still. Fear filled the room like a fog. Then Vorik stopped. He had found the humans. There were 3 of them in the class. They were looking at their desks, their faces pale. And then there was Yuna, sitting alone in the 3rd row. Vorik smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had found something interesting. "Humans," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The youngest species in the galaxy. The weakest, the most fragile." He walked closer to the 2 boys at the front. They did not look up. "I remember the border wars. I remember how your soldiers screamed, how they begged, how they broke so easily under pressure. One of the boys was shaking now, the other had closed his eyes. Vorik laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. Your kind survived the war only because we allowed it, because we grew tired of killing things that died so quickly. It was not victory, it was mercy. The words hung in the air. Yuna felt them like punches to her chest. She thought of the stories she had heard. Stories of human soldiers fighting against impossible odds. Stories of sacrifice and courage and pain. She did not believe the general's words. But she did not speak either. Not yet. Vorik turned away from the two boys. He seemed bored with them already. His eyes swept across the room again, searching for something more interesting. And then he saw her. Yuna was not looking at her desk. She was not shaking. She was not crying. She was looking directly at him. Her dark eyes were calm and steady. Her hands rested flat on her notebook. Her breathing was slow and even. She did not look away. General Vorik tilted his head. In all his years of conquest, he had learned to read fear. He knew what it looked like in 100 different species. He knew the smell of it, the taste of it. Fear was his weapon, sharper than any blade. But this girl did not seem afraid. The other students moved out of his way like water parting around a stone. He stopped in front of her desk and looked down. She was so small, so fragile. He could break her with one hand. "You," he said. "What is your name?" "Yuna," she answered. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Yuna," he repeated, as if testing the word. "You are not afraid of me, little human." The room held its breath. Yuna thought about the question. She thought about her brother. She thought about all the nights she had spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was alive or dead. She thought about the anger that lived deep inside her chest, quiet and patient, like a fire that never went out. "No," she said, "I am not." Vorik's golden eyes narrowed. For a moment, something flickered across his face. It might have been surprise. It might have been anger. It might have been something else entirely. He leaned closer. His breath was hot and smelled of iron. "Then perhaps," he said slowly, "we should fix that." The classroom waited. The galaxy waited. And Yuna did not blink. General Vorik did not move. He stood over Yuna like a mountain stands over a flower. His golden eyes burned into hers. The silence in the room was so thick, it felt like a weight pressing down on everyone's chest. "You are brave," Vorik said. The words sounded strange coming from him, like he was not used to saying it. "Or perhaps you are foolish. With humans, it's often hard to tell the difference." Yuna said nothing. She kept her eyes on his face. She noticed things about him now that she was close. The scars on his jaw, the way his scales were darker around his eyes, the coldness that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him, like winter lived in his bones. Vorik straightened up and looked around the room. The other students were frozen in their seats. Even Instructor Mail had not moved. The Keth soldiers stood by the door, their weapons ready, their faces empty. "Let me tell you something about your species," Vorik said. He was speaking to the whole room now, but his words were aimed at Yuna. "Humans are soft. They break easily. Their bodies are weak. Their lives are short, and their spirits are even weaker. I have seen human soldiers cry for their mothers. I have seen them beg for death. I have seen them give up everything they believed in just to make the pain stop." He paused. His eyes found Yuna again. "And yet," he continued, "some of you refuse to learn your place. Some of you look at creatures like me and feel no fear. This is not courage. This is ignorance. You do not understand what I am, what I can do." It was about the thing inside you that refused to bend. "I understand," Yuna said quietly. Vorik's eyes widened slightly. You understand? You think you understand what it means to face a Keth general? I understand that you want me to be afraid, Yuna said, but I choose not to be. The room seemed to hold its breath. One of the Keth soldiers shifted his weight. Instructor Male made a small sound, like he wanted to speak, but could not find the words. Vorik stared at Yuna for a long moment. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had just thought of something cruel. Very well, he said. If you will not show fear through words, perhaps you will show it through action. He stepped back and raised his voice so everyone could hear. I challenge this human to the right of Kreth. Even the Keth soldiers looked surprised. Instructor Male finally found his voice. General, the right of Kreth is an ancient warrior tradition. It is not meant for students. It is meant for anyone who dares to stand against a Keth, Vorik interrupted. And this human has done exactly that. He looked at Yuna. Unless she wishes to apologize. Unless she wishes to admit that she was wrong to challenge me. Yuna felt everyone's eyes on her. She felt the weight of the moment. She knew what the right of Kreth was. Every student at the academy had learned about it in their first year. It was a test of will. Two opponents faced each other and stared into each other's eyes. No blinking, no looking away, no speaking. The first one to break lost. The Keth had been doing this for thousands of years. Their eyes were designed for it. They could keep them open for hours without feeling pain. No other species had ever defeated a Keth general in the right. Yuna knew all of this. She knew the odds were against her. She knew that if she lost, she would have to kneel before Vorik and say that humans were inferior. She knew that the whole galaxy would be watching. But she also knew something else. She knew that some things were worth fighting for, even if you might lose. Her best friend Hana pushed through the crowd. Hana was taller than Yuna, with short hair and worried eyes. She grabbed Yuna's arm and leaned close. Don't do this, Hana whispered. Please, you don't have to prove anything. Yuna looked at her friend. She saw the fear in Hana's eyes. She understood it, but she could not let it stop her. Someone has to, Yuna said softly. She stood up from her desk. She was so much smaller than Vorik. The top of her head barely reached his chest. But she stood straight and looked up at him without flinching. I accept your challenge, she said. The room exploded with noise. Students shouted. The Keth soldiers moved forward. Instructor Male tried to call for order. But Vorik raised one hand, and everyone went silent. The rite will take place in 1 hour, he announced. In the main assembly hall. All are welcome to watch. He looked down at Yuna, and for a moment something like respect flickered in his golden eyes. You have courage, little human, but courage alone will not save you. He turned and walked toward the door. His soldiers followed. Before he left, he stopped and looked back over his shoulder. When you kneel before me, he said, remember that you chose this. Then he was gone. The room erupted again. Students crowded around Yuna, asking questions, giving warnings, offering support. Hana was crying. Instructor Male was trying to contact the station authorities. Everything was chaos. But Yuna stood still in the middle of it all. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought about her brother again. She remembered the last time she had seen him, the day before he left for the war. He had hugged her and told her to be strong. Strength is not about winning, he had said. It is about not giving up. Yuna opened her eyes. The fear was still there, deep in her stomach, cold and heavy. But above it, something else was growing. Something that felt like fire. She did not know if she could win, but she knew she would not give up. Not ever. She looked at Hana and managed a small smile. Help me get ready, she said. Hana wiped her tears and nodded. Okay, she said. Okay. Together they walked out of the classroom. The assembly hall was waiting. The galaxy was watching. And Yuna was ready to fight. The main assembly hall of Helix Prime was the largest room on the station. It could hold 5,000 beings. Today, it was full. Word had spread fast. A Keth general had challenged a human girl to the right of Kreth. News ships had arrived from nearby systems. Diplomats had interrupted their meetings. Soldiers had left their posts. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Yuna walked into the hall with Hana at her side. The noise hit her like a wave. Thousands of voices speaking in dozens of languages. Cameras floating in the air, recording everything. Lights so bright they made her eyes water. She tried not to look at the crowd. She focused on the center of the hall, where a raised platform waited. 2 chairs had been placed on it, facing each other. That was where the rite would happen. Captain Wu met them at the edge of the platform. He was the human military liaison at the academy, a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in the border wars. He had known Yuna's brother. "You don't have to do this," he said. His voice was low and urgent. "I can talk to the station council. We can find another way." Yuna shook her head. "If I back down now, they will say humans are cowards. They will say we only know how to run." "Let them say it," Captain Wu replied. "Words don't matter. Your life matters." "My life is not in danger," Yuna said. "This is a test of will, not a fight to the death." Captain Wu looked at her for a long moment. She could see the worry in his eyes. The same worry she had seen in her father's eyes when Tay left for the war. But she could also see something else. Something that looked like pride. "Your brother would be proud of you," he said quietly. Yuna felt her throat tighten. She nodded once, unable to speak. Then she climbed the steps to the platform. General Vorik was already there. He sat in one of the chairs, his massive body making it look small. His golden eyes watched Yuna as she approached. Around him stood his soldiers and a young Keth male who wore expensive clothes and a cruel smile. Yuna had heard of him. Prince Darrow, Vorik's nephew. He was known for his arrogance and his hatred of humans. "So the little human actually came," Darrow said. His voice was high and mocking. "I thought she would run away. That is what humans do best, after all." Yuna ignored him. She walked to the empty chair and sat down. The seat was cold and hard. She placed her hands on her knees and looked straight ahead. Vorik watched her with something like curiosity. "You are calm," he observed. "Most beings shake when they face me. Even warriors, even kings." "I am not a warrior or a king," Yuna said. "I am just a student." "And yet you sit before me without fear." Vorik leaned forward slightly. "What makes you think you can win?" Yuna thought about the question. She thought about all the reasons she should be afraid. Vorik was older than her entire civilization. He had fought in wars before humans had reached the stars. His species was designed for this exact challenge. But then she thought about something else. She thought about all the stories she had heard about humans. Not the stories of defeat, but the other stories. The stories of people who survived when they should have died. The stories of soldiers who kept fighting when there was no hope. The stories of ordinary people who did extraordinary things because they refused to give up. "I do not think I can win," she said honestly, "but I think I can try." Vorik was silent for a moment. Then he nodded, a small movement that might have been respect. "Then let us begin." An official stepped forward. He was a Solari, like Instructor Male, with 4 arms and a nervous expression. He explained the rules in a loud, clear voice. No blinking, no looking away, no speaking once the rite started, no physical contact. The first person to close their eyes for more than 1 second would lose. The crowd went quiet. 5,000 beings held their breath. The official raised his hand. "Begin," he said. Yuna locked her eyes on Vorik's face. His golden eyes stared back at her, cold and ancient and terrible. She could see herself reflected in them, small and fragile and alone. The first minute passed. Yuna's eyes began to sting. She wanted to blink, but she pushed the feeling down. She focused on Vorik's eyes. She studied the patterns in his scales. She counted the small lines around his pupils. 5 minutes passed. The crowd was completely silent now. Yuna could hear her own heartbeat. She could feel the sweat forming on her palms. Her eyes burned like someone had poured sand into them. But she did not blink. 10 minutes passed. Vorik's expression had not changed. He looked like he could sit there forever. His eyes did not water. His body did not move. He was like a statue made of stone and ice. Yuna thought about her brother. She remembered his smile. She remembered the sound of his laugh. She remembered the way he used to carry her on his shoulders when she was little. She had not seen him in 5 years. She did not know if he was alive or dead. But she carried him with her, in her heart, in her memories. He was the reason she was here. He was the reason she could not give up. 30 minutes passed. The crowd began to murmur. This was longer than anyone had expected. Most challengers broke within the first 10 minutes. Some lasted 20. But 30 minutes was almost unheard of. Yuna's vision was starting to blur. Tears were forming in the corners of her eyes, trying to keep them wet. The pain was incredible, like fire spreading across her face. But she did not blink. 45 minutes passed. Prince Daro was pacing behind his uncle, his face twisted with anger. "This is taking too long," he muttered. "End it already." Vorik did not respond. His eyes were still locked on Yuna's face, but something had changed in his expression. The arrogance was fading. Something else was taking its place. It might have been confusion. It might have been doubt. 1 hour passed. The crowd erupted in whispers. 1 hour. A human had lasted 1 hour against General Vorik in the Rite of Kreth. Yuna could barely see now. Her eyes were full of tears. The pain was everywhere. In her head, in her neck, in her shoulders. Every part of her body was screaming at her to stop. But she thought about her grandmother's words. She thought about her brother's smile. She thought about all the humans who had fought and suffered and refused to give up. She was not just fighting for herself. She was fighting for all of them. And so she kept her eyes open, and she stared into the golden eyes of the monster in front of her. And she did not blink. Not once. 2 hours had passed. The assembly hall was no longer just full. People were standing in the hallways, watching on screens. Ships were parked in orbit around Helix Prime, their crews tuned to the live broadcast. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched a small human girl stare into the eyes of a monster. Yuna had stopped feeling the pain. It was still there, she knew, but her body had moved beyond it. She existed now in a strange, quiet place, a place where nothing mattered except the golden eyes in front of her. Vorik had not moved. He sat like a mountain, ancient and unshakable. But Yuna had been watching him closely. She had noticed things, small things, the way his breathing had changed, the tiny movements at the corner of his mouth, the almost invisible tension in his shoulders. He was not as calm as he appeared. The crowd had stopped talking. The silence was so deep that Yuna could hear the humming of the lights above her head. She could hear the soft shuffle of feet as Keth's soldiers shifted their weight. And then Vorik spoke. The rite did not allow speaking, but there was an exception. The challenger could speak, to try to break the other's will. It was a weapon, just like any other. "I knew a human soldier once," Vorik said. His voice was soft, meant only for Yuna. "During the border wars. He was young, brave, foolish, like you." Yuna did not respond. She could not respond, but she listened. He fought well, Vorik continued. He killed 3 of my warriors before we captured him. I was impressed, so I gave him a choice. Swear loyalty to the Kef Dominion, or die. Vorik's golden eyes seemed to grow darker. He refused, so I made him watch as we destroyed his unit, one by one. He screamed, he begged, but still he refused to break. Do you want to know what happened to him? Yuna felt her heart stop. His name was Tay. The word hit her like a physical blow. She felt her body shake. She felt tears, real tears not from the pain, begin to form in her eyes. Vorik smiled. It was a cruel smile, the smile of a predator who had found a weakness. He died screaming, Vorik said, just like all the others, just like you will break, right here, right now. Yuna's vision blurred. She could see her brother's face. She could hear his voice. She could feel the emptiness in her chest, the hole that had been there for 5 years. A tear rolled down her cheek. The crowd stirred. People leaned forward, expecting her to break. But Yuna did not close her eyes. Something was happening inside her. The grief was there, heavy and terrible. But underneath it, something else was growing. Something hot and bright, like a flame that had been waiting for this moment to burn. Anger. Vorik had used her brother's name to hurt her. He had turned her love into a weapon against her. He had taken the most precious thing she had and twisted it. And she would not let him win. Yuna stared into his golden eyes, and for the first time she pushed back. Not with words, because she could not speak. Not with her body, because she could not move. But with something else, something deeper. Her will. 3 hours passed. The Keth soldiers were restless now. They whispered to each other, their faces showing confusion and fear. This was not supposed to happen. No one lasted 3 hours against General Vorik. No one. Prince Darrow had stopped pacing. He stood frozen, his face pale, his eyes wide. Uncle, he said, this is impossible. She must be cheating. There must be some trick. He could not answer without admitting weakness. But Yuna could see it in his eyes now. The doubt, the confusion, the first tiny cracks in his ancient confidence. He had expected her to break when he mentioned her brother. He had expected the grief to destroy her. But instead, it had made her stronger. He did not understand. How could grief make someone stronger? How could pain become power? But Yuna understood. Her grandmother had taught her. Her brother had shown her. Humans were not strong despite their pain. They were strong because of it. Every loss taught them to hold on tighter. Every failure taught them to try again. Every wound reminded them what they were fighting for. 3.5 hours passed. Vorik's left eye twitched. It was small, so small that most people would not notice. But Yuna noticed. She saw the tiny movement, the brief flutter of muscle. She saw the first sign of weakness. The flame inside her burned brighter. She thought about Tay. Not his death. She did not know if Vorik's story was true, but his life. She thought about the time he had taught her to ride a bicycle. She thought about the night he had stayed up with her when she was sick. She thought about all the small, beautiful moments that made up a life. She thought about love. And she realized something. Vorik did not understand love. He understood fear. He understood power. He understood conquest. But he did not understand why someone would endure pain for another person. He did not understand why a small girl would sit in front of a monster and refuse to break. That was his weakness. 4 hours passed. The crowd was completely silent. The entire galaxy was holding its breath. Vorik's eye twitched again, longer this time, more noticeable. Yuna felt her own body shaking. Her eyes were burning. Her muscles were cramping. Everything hurt. But she was still here. She was still fighting. And she could see the end. Not her end, his. Vorik's golden eyes were no longer cold. There was something new in them. Something that looked almost like fear. Not fear of Yuna. She was still just a small human girl. But fear of something bigger. Fear of what she represented. If she could last this long, what else could humans do? If she could endure this pain, what else could they endure? If she could stare into the eyes of a monster and refuse to blink, what couldn't they do? Vorik had spent his whole life believing that humans were weak. That belief had shaped his strategies, his politics, his understanding of the galaxy. And now, in this moment, that belief was crumbling. One girl was rewriting everything he knew. His eye twitched again, and again, and again. Yuna saw it. The galaxy saw it. The monster was breaking. And the girl was not. 4 hours and 17 minutes. That was how long the Rite of Kreth lasted. That was how long a 19-year-old human girl stared into the eyes of the most feared general in the galaxy. And then General Vorik closed his eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence was so complete that Yuna could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Then she heard a gasp. Then another. Then the entire assembly hall exploded. The noise was deafening. 5,000 beings screaming, shouting, crying. Camera drones flew in circles, capturing every angle. Somewhere in the crowd, Hana was sobbing. Somewhere else, Captain Wu was staring at the platform, with tears running down his face. Yuna did not move. She sat in her chair, her eyes still open, her body shaking with exhaustion. She was not sure what had just happened. She was not sure it was real. Then Vorik opened his eyes. The golden light in them was different now. The coldness was gone. The arrogance was gone. What remained was something Yuna had never expected to see in a Keth general. Respect. Slowly, painfully, Vorik stood. His massive body unfolded from the chair like a mountain rising from the earth. The crowd went silent again, waiting. Vorik looked down at Yuna. She was still sitting, too tired to stand, her face wet with tears, her eyes red and swollen. She looked small and fragile and broken. But she had not broken. That was the point. That was everything. I have lived for 400 years, Vorik said. His voice carried across the silent hall. I have fought in 1,000 battles. I have faced warriors and kings and emperors. I have never lost the Rite of Kreth. He paused. The galaxy waited. Until today. The crowd erupted again, but Vorik raised his hand and they fell silent. I came here to prove that humans were weak, he continued. I came here to show the galaxy that your species was nothing, that you survived the border wars only because we allowed it. He looked at Yuna, and something like a smile crossed his scarred face. I was wrong. Prince Darrow pushed forward, his face twisted with anger. Uncle, you cannot say this. You cannot admit defeat to a human. It is disgraceful. It is— Silence, Vorik said. The word was quiet, but it carried the weight of centuries. Darrow stopped talking immediately. Vorik turned back to Yuna. She was trying to stand now, her legs shaking beneath her. He watched as she struggled, as she fought against her own exhausted body. And then, to the shock of everyone watching, he extended his hand. Yuna looked at it. The hand of a monster, the hand that had killed thousands of her people, the hand that might have killed her brother. She took it. Vorik pulled her gently to her feet. She was so light, so small, he could have crushed her without effort. But instead, he steadied her until she could stand on her own. I told you that courage alone would not save you, he said quietly, so only she could hear. I was wrong about that too. Your courage saves something much more important than yourself. Then he stepped back, and General Vorik, Supreme Commander of the Keth Dominion, bowed his head to a human girl. The galaxy would remember this moment forever. The Keth Dominion acknowledges human resilience, Vorik announced. We acknowledge that we underestimated your species. You are not strong despite your fragility. You are strong because of it. You know that you can break, and you choose not to. He looked around the hall, at the thousands of beings who had gathered to watch. Let it be known, he said. Let it be remembered. This human has earned the respect of the Keth. The crowd went mad. People were crying, laughing, hugging each other. Species that had been enemies for centuries were celebrating together. Something had shifted. Something important. Hana rushed onto the platform and threw her arms around Yuna. You did it, she sobbed. You actually did it. Yuna held her friend tightly. She was crying now too, the tears flowing freely down her face. All the pain, all the fear, all the grief, it poured out of her in waves. But underneath it all, something else remained. A small, quiet flame. A sense that she had done something that mattered. The next few hours passed in a blur. Yuna was taken to the medical center and treated for eye strain and exhaustion. Diplomats came and went, asking questions, making statements. News reporters begged for interviews. Yuna ignored them all. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about her brother. Late that night, when the station had finally gone quiet, Captain Wu came to see her. He looked different somehow, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. There is something you should know, he said. He was holding a datapad in his hands, and his fingers were trembling. Yuna sat up slowly. What is it? The right of Kreth drew a lot of attention, Wu explained. More than anyone expected. It caused some diplomatic complications. Vorik's defeat embarrassed certain members of the Keth Dominion. They wanted to make amends, to show good faith. Yuna did not understand. Good faith? Wu handed her the datapad. They agreed to a prisoner exchange, prisoners from the border wars, people we thought were dead. Yuna's heart stopped. She looked at the screen. There was a list of names, dozens of names, human names, and there, near the bottom, was a name she knew. Tay. The datapad fell from her hands. She could not breathe. The world had gone white and bright and impossible. He is alive, Wu said softly. He was a prisoner of war. They kept him hidden for 5 years. But he is alive, Yuna. Your brother is coming home. Yuna tried to speak, but no words came out. Tears were streaming down her face again. But these were different. These were not tears of pain or grief. These were tears of joy. She thought about everything that had happened. She thought about the classroom, and the challenge, and the 4 hours of fire and pain. She thought about her grandmother's words, and her brother's smile. She had not known why she accepted the challenge. She had not known what she was fighting for. But now, in this moment, she understood. She had been fighting for hope. She had been fighting for the belief that impossible things could happen. She had been fighting for the small, stubborn part of the human spirit that refused to give up. And her reward was a miracle. Later, alone on the observation deck, Yuna stood and looked at the stars. The galaxy stretched out before her, vast and beautiful and full of possibilities. Somewhere out there, her brother was alive. Somewhere out there, he was waiting for her. She thought about everything she would say to him, everything she would ask, everything she had missed. And finally, after 4 hours and 17 minutes of holding on, Yuna allowed herself to blink. The stars blurred, then cleared. The future was waiting, and for the first time in 5 years, Yuna smiled.